Hey everybody, how we doing? Marc Lozano, Christ Center Capital, back here on the YouTube. I'm going to try to answer a question today that I get a lot from more savvy investors of what is the process that C3 undertakes in picking the investments we review. So I did a little bit about our ethical screening process, but how do we come across the assets, the stocks, ETFs, cryptos, and all that kind of stuff that we choose to review in the first place? Now, caveat this with eventually, we hope to grow C3 to a point where we can have a much bigger team than we have now, which is only a couple people, and be able to cover the full gamut of the market. And we want to then do this kind of ethical screening, this deep dive into thousands of assets, not just our weekly 10 or whatever. But first off, how do we come across those weekly assets that we continually review, or monthly assets? Well, here's what we do is we take a full picture of the market and we think about, or we monitor dozens, sometimes over 100 different outlets. So we're monitoring stock pickers, investment firms, a whole bunch of different analysts from across the market. We're monitoring YouTube influencers. We're monitoring major players in the market. Anyone who kind of has a say or anything that has been time tested, so to speak. We're not just picking the random YouTuber or some guy who just created a website and is throwing out stock picks. People who've been around the block, people who have a bigger following. You guys can think of the Motley Fools and the Zacks and the Scott Bowers and, more established trading firms or investment firms, the Morgan Stanleys of the world and the Vanguards of the world and stuff like this. And we're looking at all these different analysts that work for these guys that publish articles and stuff, all real public information, but we're curating it all. And we take all this information on a weekly, sometimes monthly basis, and we look at, is there any consensus? Is there a consensus on any one asset or one crypto or one investment channel that is kind of buzzworthy at the time? This asset's going to take off because of X, Y, and Z happening in the market and what their balance sheet looks like and everything. And if we find throughout all of our research of monitoring all of these different platforms and outlets, if we find an asset that has at least a 30% consensus on it, meaning of all the dozens of assets, sometimes hundreds of, or all the dozens of channels, sometimes hundreds of channels that we're monitoring, if at least 30% of them are recommending the same investment on any given week or month, we're like, okay, this is buzzworthy. We're going to take this, because if we're catering to the savvy investor on Christ Center Capital, they're probably not getting their information just from Christ Center Capital. They're getting their information from a lot of different places, which I highly encourage. C3 is great. I may be biased, but you should get information and do your research and everything from a bunch of different places, right? Because the market's a big place, and no one person, no one firm, no one stock picker is really fully invested and fully knowledgeable about all the different aspects of the investment world, right? So again, if we have all these channels, we're looking at a consensus, and a certain asset seems to have a consensus on it, of at least 30% of the outlets that we monitor or more, then we're going to take those assets and we're going to apply the ethical screening process to them, right? So this way, you can come to Christ Center Capital, you can know that you're getting timely investments, because that's what we're monitoring and filtering for, and then you're going to get the additional moral analysis on those investments. And this is pretty much our business model. Now, it takes a lot of work and a lot of research to monitor all those channels. And then it takes probably even more research to do a deep dive into each individual asset or investment recommendation that C3 is reviewing. But hopefully we can provide that service to you and you don't have to waste the time yourself, right? And I couldn't imagine trying to do this and also a 9-to-5 at the same time. It takes so much time, so much effort, and so much research goes into every little thing. And we try to make our posts very digestible and very non-investor friendly, meaning we're trying not to go too deep into the balance sheet or anything like that. We just want to provide some general basis on why this investment has financial potential, and then we do a little bit deeper dive into the moral analysis. If you're familiar with our posts, you know what I'm talking about. But that's really the goal. Just in a quick summary, we're monitoring a bunch of outlets of stock pickers and influencers and investment firms and analysts and articles and journals and everything else. If we find a consensus on any one investment or any one asset, we then take that asset and put it into our weekly or monthly reviews.